Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nala, and in today's video I'm going to be going over my June wrap up. So for the month of June I read a total of 8 books and I had a total of 7 DNFs. Y'all, at this point I am like the DNF queen. I don't have a problem with DNF in books, and clearly, like, as of late it has been like in the 6 to 7 DNF range. So as always, let's get the DNFs right out of the way. First one up is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I can never pronounce this woman's name for the life of me. The reason I DNF'd this one is because this had like witchcraft elements in it, and I didn't realize how heavy those elements were going to be, and that's basically this entire book. So that's not my thing, it's not my jam. Nix. Next one was What We Harvest by Anne Freistat. Now, I was so irked because it just brought up the point that I need to make, and please, authors, hear me now. Please put content warnings at the beginning of your story, because so many authors don't do this, and it is like a breath of fresh air when I do come across it. But content warnings need to be had, people. They have to be there. I've made the decision where I'm gonna pay attention to triggers and like heavy things that could really affect people, and I'm just gonna start giving content warnings. Future wrap-ups, that's just what I'm gonna do. Starting now. For this one, if you do want to give this story a try, the main content warnings that I'm gonna give you for this: animal death, heavy in this, and tragedy surrounding a dog. Okay, so it's not so much like the death of a dog, it's more so because if you know the premise, if you go and read the premise of the story, there's like a killer blight and it affects all the animals. Okay, and it's like more of like a zombie-esque story when it starts affecting people. You know, we got zombified people, zombified animals. So it's like the tragedy of that surrounding a dog and the details of that. And I was like, I can't, it's too much. I could not deal with that. DNF number 3 was Dark Notes by Pam Godwin. This deserves a rant. I want to rant about this till the freaking sky falls down. Okay, so put in the comments down below if you want me to have specific ranting videos. I will create ranting videos for books that need to be just, basically torn apart. Okay, no, I'm not even gonna give this the light of day in this video. Next, number 4 was The Measure by Nikki Ehrlich. Book number 5 was The Rebel Waves by Sarah Rash. Number 6 was The Librarians and the Lost Lamp by Greg Cox. So I DNF'd this one because I realized in the premise that this was a TV show, and I didn't know that. So like from years and years ago. After going through a little bit of the audio for this, and I was like, you know what? I feel like the show would be better. So I think I'll try the show and give that a go and see if it's like, if I'm into it or not. And the last DNF number 7 was The Curse of Pietro Houdini by Derek Miller. All right, on to the books. Book number 1, Beasts of Prey by Ayana Gray. This one I actually did a buddy read with Reese from Sweet Tea Reads. This is a YA fantasy, book 1 in a trilogy, I believe. I'm pretty sure it's a trilogy. The premise of this makes it sound like it's going to be taking place in a night zoo. Like we're going to be dealing with magical animals, magical beasts, magical creatures, if you will. One of our main characters, because this is multiple points of views, but one of our main characters is an indentured servant at the night zoo to pay off family debt. There are deadly beasts that are mentioned, one in particular, but it's not at all what the premise is like promoting or implied it to be. And I did read other reviews where a lot of other people thought that this was going to be a night zoo magical creature based book, and it just wasn't. And it's not just that I didn't like about it. It was also the fact that the writing style didn't allow me to connect to anyone. Again, another telly, not showy type of writing style, which affects my connection to the characters. And even the characters, like one of our main characters in particular did not show or feel emotion to the things that should have been emotion worthy. Like, it was just bizarre. It's so bizarre to me. It's not emotional enough. It's not hitting enough. And if you can't feel it, if the characters aren't even feeling it, I'm not gonna feel it, and I'm not gonna feel for them. I gave this 3 stars because aspects of this was compelling, and it was like parts of it were driving me to keep going, but like after book 1, I mean, it was only a 3-star read, which basically means it's meh, it's all right, but it's not enough to keep me going. Book number 2 was Olivetti by Allie Millington. This is a middle grade mystery, and y'all, I gave this 5 stars. This was so good, and I don't say that a lot about middle grade in general, but this was so different and so unique that I just let me just tell you why. Let me tell you why. This was coming from a typewriter's point of view. Yes, Olivetti is the name of the main character, really, is a typewriter. The line or quote of the story is basically, memories are like heartbeats. They keep things alive and make us who we are. And that is how Olivetti becomes somewhat of like a sentient being. He becomes sentient. Our main character, other than Olivetti, our sentient typewriter, is 12-year-old Ernest. His mom's name is Beatrice. Beatrice was the owner of Olivetti. She suddenly disappears. Olivetti basically helps crack the mystery of where she's gone. This is basically a story about how trauma affects the emotional downfall in people and how to heal and reconnect with others and yourself. It's about not losing yourself. It's about forgiveness. It's sweet and sorrowful, and it covers so many topics that it's a really good introduction for younger readers to cover topics like this. I loved it. It's unique, different, and precious, and I highly recommend it. Next up is Foe by Ian Reid. This one is a 2-star. 2 stars. Let me tell you why. This is deemed as like a psychological mind bender. It's following a married couple living in the middle of nowhere on a farm. The time frame is in like the near future. It's in the future, okay? So this is like a sci-fi-esque type story. They receive a visitor one day out of the blue from the city. This visitor is telling the husband, I think his name's Junior, he's telling Junior that he has been selected to travel very far away to space on a mandatory mission. And not only that, but arrangements have already been made for someone to take his place with his wife in their home, ... So this story is, it was left open-ended, and it wasn't done in a way that was good in my opinion. Like for me, because I don't like open-ended things usually. Like, it has to be done a certain way, and it didn't work for me in this. It did not work for me. I did not get the answers I needed. At the end, they give you like a hint. I got it gives you a hint to like at least one thing at the end, which I got, which I'm hoping I was right on. I'm pretty sure I am. But because it's so open-ended, I'm just like, was I right on that? There's no like conclusion or like resolution. So I'm pretty sure I'm right. They do give it like hinting. If you can pick up one things, which I'm really good at, then the hint would make sense to like what it's like hinting towards. Listen, y'all, if anyone is watching this that has read this, please leave me down in the comments below. Please tell me what the Beatles meant. What were the Beatles? put like spoiler hashtags, whatever, so you know people don't want to get spoiled, don't have to get spoiled, but I need to know what the Beatles were. What the hickety heck were these Beatles? Like, please tell me. Next was The Ingenue by Rachel Kelpeck. I cannot pronounce her middle name. Capelke-Dale. This is a dark contemporary story. I gave it 3 stars, maybe 3.5. You know what? Now that I'm talking out loud to myself and to y'all about it, I'm gonna give it 3.5. I had 3 stars. I'm bumping it to 3.5. This is following our main character, who is a former piano prodigy. Her name is Saskia. Saskia is returning home after her mother's death. Now, she is also expecting to inherit the family estate. The family estate is called the Elf House. Right off the bat, that tells you this place is huge. And it holds some sort of historical significance. To her shock, she finds out that her mother had willed the estate over to a man that she had a coerced relationship with when she was underage as a teenager. So this delves into past and present tense, deals with expectations of talent as, you know, a kid prodigy, sexual abuse, of course. And this is like the post Me Too movement, which kind of leads into, okay, this is like Dark Vanessa, My Dark Vanessa. My Dark Vanessa is one of my favorite stories, and that was also post Me Too movement. Now, in the Goodreads premise, I think it actually says My Dark Vanessa as being like, this is similar to that. No, it's not. I don't like it when people automatically say this story is like that. If you like this, you will like that, because they have one thing in common. You know how many stories deal with sexual abuse? Quite a lot. I think those two stories, the Ingenue and My Dark Vanessa, have in common is sexual abuse with a minor. My Dark Vanessa was done so much better. It did not cover thoroughly the effects of sexual abuse. Instead, was reiterating on all of the practicality and factual like necessities surrounding the financial status and things that needed to happen with the will and the house. So in that way, I did not like the writing of this. The writing of this is just, again, it was more on the practicality, and it didn't cover barely anything emotional was like reflected upon. What? So in terms of the effects of sexual abuse of her life, like it mentioned it in a factual tone and like voice inflection. My Dark Vanessa is all about the emotional effects of what that does to a person throughout her entire life, from when it started up until the present. You're in her inner monologue, you're in her emotions, you're in her feelings, you're like living it out with her. So that story is so much more in depth. There's so much more context. There's so much tangible emotional depth to like grab onto and experience and become attached to her and feel for her. Without that, you can't be attached. You can't really feel for what's happening. That was missing from this story, okay? Like, you can't have that missing from a story like this, from a story with that kind of, from a story in general, okay? If that's missing, then it's not for me. The reason I'm giving this 3.5 stars was because of the dark fairy tale elements that were woven into this story. The fact that she was a piano prodigy, the details of that was covered was very intriguing. And the dark fairy tale elements, there is some like mythology and like folklore kind of weaved into it. Her mother did a rewriting of fairy tales, and And also the ending was like bizarre, and it was like, whoa, okay. It fits. The ending was the only thing that fit the effects of what that does. It fit who she turned out to be, and it actually wrapped up the whole like dark fairy tale situation, like came full circle. So I was actually quite shocked and surprised that the ending was what it was. And that is what I liked about this book. That like usually never happens, but in this, it did. I was surprised by the ending. That is what saved it for me. The ending of this saved it for me. I don't think I've ever said that about a book before. Like, the ending is what made it what it was, and the rest was just like, eh. Book number 5 was I'm Thinking of Ending Things by, again, Ian Reid. Now, after I read Foe, another one of his popular stories is this one. I was like, and it's short. It's like a shorter read as well. So I was like, all right, I have to see what all the fuss is about. I gave it 3 stars. And the only reason I gave it 3 stars is because of what it ended up turning out to be. You have to get through the whole entire thing and to be like, oh, and then like listen to it backwards. Okay, you get to the end, and actually says at the end, you listen to it backwards. You listen to it back, it's like, oh yeah, if you listen, it was too insane for me to listen to the whole thing through backwards. Literary, there's the word, literary. Oh my God, y'all, suspense, that's what I'm trying to say. So when this first started off, I was like, I immediately didn't like the writing style. Again, it was like factual and just stating mundane facts, and just facts are just like life. And I'm just like, what? I can't stand this. But then I realized, I was like, okay, I'm clearly, and this is because I recognize it. I could recognize it. Someone else may not recognize it. I recognized immediately that I was in the head of someone with a form of psychosis. So this covers mental illness, number 1. When everything wraps up at the end, it's clearly obvious that this is covering a story of mental illness and mental disorders. Mental illness and mental disorders are not the same things, okay? I can't say any more without spoilers. That is the most I can say. I gave it 3 stars because I have never come across another story that has covered someone living with this type of mental disorder. I think that it needs to be recognized. So for that alone, I think that it should be recognized, which is why I gave it 3 stars. I didn't like the writing style. At the same time, I can't really say that, because if we are covering this type of disorder, that means it's exactly what it sounds like, feels like, and you're experiencing it. But in terms of enjoyment, this was not an enjoyable ride. This was like, oh my God, it was just like, wow. I'm here, like I'm here to experience and to know what the ending is, because I'm thinking about ending things. Well, I need to get to the end. I need to know what that ending is. And so I experienced it, and it was a really difficult experience, as much as I will say. Considering the content that it is talking about, and that it is covering, again, I think it's worth the experience for that kind of representation. Book number 6 was The Huntress by Kate Quinn. This is an historical fiction, and I'm in a historical fiction mood, and Kate Quinn is kind of like the queen for that. Now, I read another book by her years ago called The Rose Code. So I was like, you know what? I'm in a mood. I'm gonna go for Kate Quinn and see what she can do for me. And this was a 4.5 star. So the queen did good. The queen delivered. This story is post World War II, and we are in multiple points of views. One of our POVs is Nina. She is a part of the Night Witches, which is an all-female night bomber regiment. We're going through her past and present tense when we're dealing with her story. She is fantastic. I actually really understood her character really well. She's very intense because she has to be, and when you go through her backstory of how she grew up, you understand perfectly and you root for her. Like, she is a badass, tough chick. We then follow another point of view, Ian Graham, who is a war correspondent who becomes a Nazi hunter. One target has eluded him. The target, she is called the Huntress. Now, he teams up with Nina to hunt her down. We're hunting down war criminals, okay? Now this is not a story of hunting down Nazi war criminals, but it's kind of like it's giving him that's his life at this point. The Huntress has a record on her. Nina was the last witness and the last, I guess, victim, you could say, and the only one that has survived. So they end up together, they team up, hunt her down. Now, our other point of view is Jordan. We are following her at the age of 17, leading up to her in her early 20s. Her widowed father suddenly brings home a new fiance who happens to be a German widow. Now, Jordan starts to dive into her new stepmother's past and starts to uncover secrets. And the story goes on from there. It was so well done. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. There was one thing that was missing in this, which is why I didn't give it 5 stars, and that was something in Nina's backstory that was overlooked, that didn't make sense, and that one little detail that didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. It's because it was either forgotten or overlooked, but it made her entire story. So the fact that this one thing wasn't covered or touched on, it was like, you can't overlook that or skip that, because then the rest of the story, it's like, how did she end up there? It just didn't, it was like a gap that needed to be filled in. But everything else was like, I also learned something in this. It was mentioned that most SS officers had their blood type tattooed under their left arm, which was how quite a number of them were known as former Nazis. Just a little tidbit. Book number 7 was Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. This is like a suspense mystery. I gave it 4 stars. One thing I liked about the story, one little bit in this, was one of our main characters. She is a doula, and one thing that she mentions in this is that it is consent. Like, she goes over and talks about consent multiple times. One thing she says is an absence of a no does not mean yes. So I thought I had to repeat that. I just had to say that to the world, because that is 100% facts. An absence of a no does not automatically mean it's a yes. Okay? All right. Moving on. In the story, one woman goes missing, then a mother and a daughter goes missing not too long afterwards, just blocks apart in the same neighborhood. So are they connected? Are these events connected? 11 years later, a little girl turns up again, and then everything unfolds. All of the history unfolds. Content warnings for this. I'm giving content warnings. This is descriptively detailed and a bit graphically disturbing, y'all, with what this child goes through. And it slaps you right in the face in the beginning, right at the beginning. Okay, so it's graphically descriptive, it's disturbing. You have to just go into it knowing that, okay, this child gets abducted, and what these people have, the environment they put her in, what they do to her, what she goes through for 11 years, just makes you, it's just awful. It's awful. When I got to that point where I couldn't take it anymore, it ended. Okay? If it went any further, I would have DNF'd it, because it would have been unnecessary. The point has gotten across. but just go into it knowing that it's that type of content, and it's like it'll take you right to the cliff where you want to jump. You just want to jump off. And the last book that I completed was Gwendy's Magic Feather by Stephen King. This is book 2 in the Gwendy's Button Box series. But I'm stopping it here. I'm not going to go on to book 3. I gave book 2 3 stars. In this one, we are back in the town of Castle Rock, Maine, and 2 girls have gone missing. We then visit Gwendy. She is now living in DC. She is now a congresswoman. Button Box randomly shows up to her again, and the guy Ferris, I think his name is Richard Ferris, I don't remember. He is not around. He did not present it. He is not there to explain anything to her. Literally, the Button Box just shows up and she is just like flabbergasted. So she goes back home because this happens when the 2 disappearances of these girls happen in her hometown. So she goes back home with the Button Box, tries to help solve the mystery of the disappearances. She tries to get involved and close the case. And I mentioned this in my last wrap up with when I read book 1. It was a combination of going like an outside narrator reading her and then like kind of dipping into her point of view and then coming back out. This one was complete, and that was a novella. It was short, so I could deal with it and it was okay. This one was a full-length novel and I couldn't deal with it. I didn't like it. The only other book, it reminded me, I was like, wait a minute, there's only one other story, I believe, that is coming off the top of my head, that I read that was like this, where it was like being narrated and not in the point of view of our characters, and that was The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. And I actually liked that story. For the most part, I loved the Starless Sea, but it was the only story that I had ever read or listened to that was being narrated, and I didn't think I was going to like it. But it worked for that because of the beautiful writing that story had. This one didn't have what it needed to make up for that for me. I didn't like it. The whole thing's being narrated. It's like me watching Gwendy and narrating to you what I'm seeing. Like, we didn't get her feelings, her thoughts, her emotions, her inner monologue, like nothing. Like, it just didn't work for me. I didn't like it for this. And I also thought the ending of this was convenient. It was convenient and it was rushed, and I didn't feel anything really wrapped up. I was just like, wait, what? That's convenient and now it's done? There was nothing like twisty or turny or thrilly. The 3 T's, twisty, turny, thrilly. None of the 3 T's existed in this for me. I gave it 3 stars because it was just all right. It was all right. It was meh. I wanted more of the Button Box too. Like, I felt like the Button Box didn't really make an appearance like it did in book 1. Like, that's the star, and it just didn't do what it needed to do, y'all. That's that. In the words of Forrest Gump, that's all I gotta say about that. All right, I've been talking a lot, and I wrapped up. That's the wrap up. That was everything for the month of June. Please comment below if you have read any of these, if you liked any of these, if you hated any of these, if you agree with anything that I said. I would love to know your thoughts. Like this video if you liked it, and smash that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my upcoming bookish content. And as always, happy reading, and I shall see you in my next video. Cheers.